Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Canadian Immigrant Virtual Fair presented by the Bank of Montreal in association with Public Mobile. We are thrilled to have everyone join us for the speaker sessions today. We hope that you're enjoying the fair so far. I'm the editor of Canadian Immigrant. My name is Ramya Ramanathan, and I'm with my colleague Laura Jackman. I'd like to welcome you to the speaker session, Pathways to Permanent Residency. So I'm joined by Sarah Finall and Darcy Bromley, outreach officers from IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And we're happy to have them here today to give an overview of how the federal economic immigration system, Express Entry, works, explain the 3 pathways to permanent residence through this system, and provide advice on what temporary measures were introduced due to COVID to help visitors and workers in Canada. So Darcy and Sarah, I hope that was accurate and that's what you will be speaking about. Feel free to add anything that might not be here in the description. If you have any questions for Sarah or Darcy, feel free to type them in the chat or in the Q&A. We will be getting to your questions towards the end of the presentation. You can also email us at info@canadianimmigrant.ca. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah and Darcy. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And we really appreciate the invitation to speak today about pathways to permanent residence and the Express Entry system. And if we can just move to the next slide. This is what we will be covering today on our topics. We'll start by reviewing important concepts that's important for everyone to understand, and then we'll provide an overview of the Express Entry system. We'll then go over some of the temporary measures that are in place due to COVID-19. And it's important to note that the policies and programs are subject to change. And so for the latest information, please visit the IRCC website. And we'll move to the next slide. So let's start by talking about a few important concepts. Next slide. So when speaking of Canada's temporary and permanent economic immigration programs and the work permit process, the concept of the National Occupational Classification Code is very important to understand. The NOC is a tool used to classify all occupations in Canada according to their skill level and their skill type. It's very important to understand the NOC as work experience in skilled jobs is required before you can apply for permanent residence through the Express Entry system. So when looking at NOC codes that best describe your job, it's important to read through the list of main duties for each job and pick the occupation that most closely resembles your job duties. For economic immigration programs, eligibility is often dependent on the skill level of the individual's work experience. So I see we're already on the next slide, but let's talk about the language testing for a moment. As you would know, Canada has 2 official languages, English and French, and everyone must prove their language ability in Canada's official languages by taking an improved language test. These tests are done by a third-party organization, and there is a cost associated to them. Language test results must be less than 2 years old when a candidate completes their Express Entry profile and when they apply for permanent residence. And we move to the next slide. So educational credential assessments, otherwise known as an ECA, and you'll all become very well versed in the acronyms. So what is an ECA? It's an assessment used to equate foreign education credential to a Canadian one. You do not need an ECA for education completed in Canada. It's done by a third-party organization for which there is a fee associated to it. In the Express Entry system, educational points are awarded for the highest education credential completed. For candidates with master's, professional, or doctorate degrees completed outside of Canada, an ECA is not needed for your lower credential. So it's usually just for your highest credential that it's required for. And we can move to the next slide. So Express Entry is Canada's flagship application management system. Applicants who are most likely to succeed economically are invited to apply for permanent residence and benefit from faster processing. Next slide, please. So this online system manages applications for permanent residence from skilled workers. Creating a profile online is free. and does not require an immigration lawyer or consultant. However, there are upfront costs for elements such as language testing and the educational credential assessments. Next slide, please. So the first step for most economic immigrants is to submit a profile under Express Entry for one of the 3 programs: Federal Skilled Worker Program, the Federal Skilled Trades Program, or the Canadian Experience class. In addition, all the provinces and territories have the ability to go into one of these programs to select a candidate. Note that you have to meet the minimum criteria under one of these 3 programs to be eligible for the Provincial Nominee Program under Express Entry. An important takeaway here is that only skilled work experience at the NOC, OA, or B level qualifies for Express Entry, and that language results must be less than 2 years old when you complete your Express Entry profile. And we'll move to the next slide. So this gives you an outline of the 3 programs that are under Express Entry. And there are minimum criteria for Express Entry. The criteria for each program is slightly different. For example, under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you must have at least 1 year of continuous Canadian or foreign work experience at the NOC, OA, or B level within the last 10 years. You need to possess a Canadian education credential or the foreign equivalent and meet the specified language requirements. Now, under the Federal Skilled Trades Program, it's slightly different. You must have at least 24 months of work experience in an eligible skilled trade within the last 5 years, have a valid job offer in the skilled trade for at least 1 year, or a Canadian Certificate of Qualification, and as well as meeting the language requirements. And each category has slightly different language requirements. In the Canadian Experience class, you must have at least 12 months of Canadian work experience, again at the NOC, OA, or B level, and you must meet the language requirements. So the main takeaway here is that for the Canadian Experience class, what does not count is any employment in Canada during full-time study or any work while self-employed, and as well as any time if you were working and you were not authorized to work in Canada. But what does count is full-time work experience in Canada at the NOC, OA, or B level in the past 3 years. The work experience gained must be while you're legally authorized to work in Canada, such as being on a post-grad work permit or other work permits. Next slide. So the Express Entry is a step-by-step process. The first step is to create an Express Entry profile. Once a profile has been created, those who appear to meet the criteria of one or more of the 3 immigration programs managed through Express Entry are automatically entered into the Express Entry pool of candidates once they've created their profile. When a candidate is accepted into the pool, they're given a comprehensive ranking system score based on language, education, skills, and experience. Candidates are then ranked against each other in the pool. And then the second step. So in the second step, top-ranked candidates are then invited to apply online for permanent residence. If an individual would like to see what their score would be if they filled out a profile, they can use our comprehensive ranking system tool on our website. Next slide, please. So when creating your profile, please remember that you must meet the criteria of at least one of the federal economic immigration programs managed by Express Entry in order to get into the pool. Now, your profile does stay active for up to 1 year. And it's important to keep that information up to date. If you have changed your jobs or differences in your family makeup, you need to update your profile on a regular basis. If you're not invited to apply within 12 months of submitting your Express Entry profile, it will expire. When your profile expires, it will be removed from the system, and that's when you have to create a new one if you still meet the minimum criteria. Now, there are no guarantees. Completing a profile does not guarantee that you'll get an invitation to apply, and applying does not guarantee that you'll be approved for permanent residence. In order to gain permanent residence, applicants still need to meet all of the eligibility and admissibility requirements. And finally, it's very important to be truthful. Anyone who provides false information could be found inadmissible for misrepresentation. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the comprehensive ranking system. At the beginning, I talked about how there's lots of acronyms within the government, and this is what we also refer to as a CRS. So the CRS is a points-based system that we use to assess and score your profile and rank you in the express entry pool. The points that you get from CRS include a core set of points up to 600 points and a set of additional points up to 600 points for a total score of 1,200. Now, the detailed breakdown of how points are awarded is available on our website, and I would highly recommend that you go and you take a look at that because all that information is there in detail. But to give you an idea, on January 21st, 454 was the minimum score that received an invitation to apply for permanent residence. This was a general round including all the 3 classes of permanent residence. And we can move to the next slide. So this is a chart that breaks down the points for each factor, and you can find this information on our website. It talks about your age points, educational, language, your Canadian work experience, and so all this information is available to you if you go and look on our website. Next slide, please. Another area for additional points is through a provincial or territorial nomination. So a total of 600 points are awarded to a candidate with a nomination from the province or territory. Provinces and territories can nominate a foreign national, but their criteria in each province and territory differs across the country. So you just need to check their websites of each province for more information. All candidates nominated via the express entry PNP stream must meet the minimum criteria for express entry. So it's important to note that the province can nominate a person, but it's still the federal government who makes the final decision on the permanent resident application. Next slide, please. Now, there are other ways to obtain additional points, such as having a valid job offer. A job offer must be for a minimum of 1 year once an applicant receives permanent residence. Next slide, please. CRS awards additional points based on education completed in Canada. So please remember that to obtain these points, all studies must have been completed at a designated learning institution in Canada. Next slide, please. We'll also grant, you may be granted additional points if you have siblings in Canada. So siblings need to be through blood, adoption, marriage, or common law partner. Your brother or sister must be at least 18 years old and must be living in Canada as a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. Next slide, please. Now, recognition is also given to one of the Government of Canada's priorities, which is to increase Francophone migration outside of the province of Quebec. So if you're outside of Quebec and you show that you have a score of 7 for all 4 French language abilities, you can be awarded additional points for that. Next slide, please. Now, once you have created your express entry profile and have been added to the pool, you may receive an invitation to apply. You will be required to submit a complete electronic application for permanent residence within 90 days of being issued an invitation. So it is really important to be prepared once your profile is submitted to ensure that you have all the necessary documentation for your application should you be invited to apply. So if you're looking at applying now and you think that you're almost ready to apply, it's very important to gather the documents, to gather everything that you might need to support your application for permanent residence. A complete application means that all supporting documentation must be submitted with your application, including your language tests, your police certificates, and your medical exams. And we can move to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the applicable fees for an application for permanent residence. On the right side of the slide, you'll see proof of funds. This is information that you need to provide in your application to show the amount of funds that you have access to. So if someone has a valid job offer, then they are exempt from this. And it does apply to the federal skilled workers and federal skilled trade programs only. But this shows that for your family size, how much money you would have to have available to you to help support your settlement in Canada. And and it's per family member, so the amount goes up depending on the size of your family. And we can move to the next slide, please. Now, if you're not eligible for immigration for permanent residence through the Express Entry program, there might be other pathways available to you. So you need to consult our website and visit the province's immigration website to learn more. But we have programs such as the Rural and Northern Immigration Program or the Startup Visa Program. There's a variety of other programs that people may qualify for if they do not qualify under the Express Entry. Or you might also want to do some more things to increase your points. So you might need to get more work experience under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program or under the International Mobility Program. And we can move to the next slide. So let's talk about COVID-19 updates, as a number of facilitative measures have been put in place during the pandemic. And again, I just want to remind everyone that this information is accurate today, but information is changing regularly. So you please need to go to our website, and we can move to the next slide. So work is considered to be an essential reason for travel to Canada. Foreign nationals who hold a work permit or who have been approved for work may travel to Canada. Those traveling directly from the United States can apply for work permits when they arrive at the port of entry. However, those who are traveling from other countries are required to submit their application and receive their work permit prior to traveling to Canada. So currently, business visitors can travel to Canada from the United States, but only if they're traveling for an essential purpose. And Canada Border Services Agency will make the final determination on what is essential. And we can move to the next slide. When a person is approved for a work permit to travel to Canada, they'll need their electronic travel authority or their visitor visa, as well as proof that they've been approved for a work permit. And it's strongly encouraged that they have documents to show that they're traveling for a non-discretionary purpose. Again, Canada Border Services Agency makes a final determination as to what is considered non-discretionary travel on a case-by-case basis. And that's where having the work permit gives evidence for that. If we can move to the next slide, please. Once someone travels to Canada, quarantine is mandatory upon entry, even for people with no symptoms. So travelers must prepare a quarantine plan for the 14 days after they arrive in Canada. Please make sure to review the provincial requirements, because from province to province, the criteria might change. There are also penalties for not following the quarantine plan. Travelers are expected to complete information in their Arrive Canada app to provide contact information, their quarantine plan, and their COVID-19 self-assessment. Next slide, please. As of February 22nd, air travelers are required to reserve a government-authorized hotel for 3 nights, take a COVID-19 test on arrival, pay for the cost of the hotel stay, and complete the remainder of the 14-day quarantine at their final destination. Travelers will also be required to take another COVID-19 test later during their 14-day quarantine. They'll be provided with the COVID-19 test kit and instructions before they leave the airport. Next slide, please. Due to COVID-19, we cannot process applications as we once did prior to COVID. For this reason, we cannot provide processing times. IRCC is prioritizing applications from people who are exempt from travel restrictions. In order to keep this process as smooth as possible, IRCC has temporarily imposed the requirement that applications for temporary residence be submitted online. And that's just the work to where people are available to work from, and it's easier to do that when we're in the electronic world. Okay, and then we can move to the next slide. So we're continuing to accept all applications. However, applicants may experience some delays due to COVID-19 impacts. As a temporary measure during COVID-19, applications will not be refused if an applicant is unable to fulfill a request due to COVID-19 impacts. If an applicant receives a request from a processing office for documents that they're unable to provide for reasons related to COVID-19, the applicant needs to provide a letter of explanation to that office. And we continue to explore more ways to adapt to the current situation and create flexibility to respond to the circumstances that the pandemic has created. Next slide, please. I'm now going to mention some key measures that have been introduced by IRCC, and we can move to the next slide. So there have been numerous facilitative measures implemented to address the challenges faced during COVID-19. One of the facilitative measures allows temporary workers in Canada to start working while their new employer-specific work permit application is in process. To be eligible, the temporary resident needs to already have authorization to work in Canada, and their new application is for a change in occupation or employer. A second measure aims to provide eligible foreign nationals who've fallen out of status during COVID-19 with more time to restore their temporary resident status. It also allows eligible foreign nationals applying for a job offer supported work permit to work while a decision on their restoration and work permit applications are being processed. A third measure allows eligible foreign nationals who have valid temporary resident status as visitors who are physically present in Canada to apply for a job offer supported work permit from inside of Canada. While all visitors in Canada can apply for an employer-specific work permit under the public policy, only those who held a work permit in the last 12 months may request interim authorization to work while their application is in process. So all of these, for more details, you can go onto our website to find more details about those programs. Next slide, please. So for postgrad work permit holders, people who previously held a postgrad work permit that will expire soon can apply for a one-time 18-month open work permit from within Canada. And the window of opportunity for this is up until July 27th, 2021. Next slide, please. So as a temporary measure, temporary resident applicants are exempt from giving biometrics if they're applying from within Canada. This is a temporary measure that does not apply if you're outside of Canada. Next slide, please. So over the past over the past year, a number of our visa application centers have been closed or operating at reduced capacity. So in recognition of this, IRCC was automatically extending deadlines to give biometrics. However, that measure ended as of April 12th, as we are getting back to more service in these areas. So you must provide your biometrics within 30 days of receiving your biometrics letter. We'll consider extending the deadline if you have a reasonable explanation that shows you're affected by COVID-19. Next slide, please. So on April 14th, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship announced the creation of a one-time temporary pathway to permanent residence for international graduates and essential workers currently employed in Canada. To be eligible to apply under these temporary policies, graduates and workers must be present and authorized to work in Canada at the time of their application. They must also have proficiency in one of Canada's official languages and meet general admissibility requirements. International graduates must have completed an eligible school program at a designated learning institution no earlier than January 2017. Next slide, please. And then for temporary foreign workers, they must have at least 12 months of authorized full-time Canadian work experience in a healthcare profession or one of the other listed essential occupations. It's important to note that this program is intended for those already in Canada. And when determining if your occupation is listed, it's important to look at the NOC codes and description of duties listed. And applications will be accepted as of May 6th for these applications. All required documents must be submitted at the time of application. We can move to the next slide, please. So again, just to refer you to our website for the most up-to-date information. And this is how you are able to contact IRCC if you have further questions. Next slide. So that's it. I just want to thank you for your time. And Sarah and I are a few questions.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you so much for that comprehensive presentation. We have quite a few questions. We'll try to get through as many as possible. So the first one is, they're quite specific. Are caregivers who are working in Canada for more than 1 year, can they apply under CEC?
So under CEC, I mean, what's important, I mean, there's a variety of different programs that are available. So again, you know, go online and see which you think is best for you. Under the CEC, it depends if you've gone to your NOC and have you looked to see if your job duties and descriptions meet that OA or B level under the NOC. And for that, then if you've had the 1 year work experience and you meet the criteria, you're able to apply. Sarah, do you have anything else to add to that?
So of course, as well, as well as the work experience, just remember you have to meet the other minimum eligibility criteria concerning education, potentially, and language proficiency. But as Darcy has pointed out, for Canadian experience class, it's simply based on in Canada work experience at that NOC 0A or B level. So that's what we're looking at. And so it really is a determination as to whether the NOC code you have meets that work experience criteria, and then you meet the other minimum eligibility criteria.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And Darcy, thank you. The next question is about the 90,000 essential temporary workers. Okay, how long will this take? I'm applying to the new stream that opens up on May 6th.
Okay, so with that, what you need to make sure is that when you apply, and if you're applying on May 6th, that you submit a complete application, that you have everything available and you submit that all at that time. This process is open from May 6th until November 5th for accepting of applications, and it really depends on the number of applications that we receive as to how long it will take to process it. So we're not able to give any further information as to how long it might take to process the application.
Great, thank you.
And just remember, there are some caps in those, in some of the streams. So once the cap is reached, even if it's not at the end date of the projected program, that will close off the applications.
Okay. I'm coming to Canada for work. Will I have to do the mandatory quarantine even if I have received 2 vaccines in my country?
Yes, so right now the mandatory quarantine is for everyone. And again, that includes if you're flying to Canada, that includes that you have to stay at the hotel for the first 3 days and then continue to your final destination for the final part of your quarantine.
And this is even if they have received 2 doses of vaccines in their country.
Yes.
There's no exception in Canada yet for individuals who are vaccinated to the standard process. And just a reminder as well that public health measures such as quarantine, travel restrictions, the processes with testing, all of those things are actually dictated by public health, not our department. So again, we do provide some information because it is very much a part of the movement process for temporary foreign workers and students, for example. But really, if you have specific questions about those requirements, you should direct those to the Public Health Agency of Canada or to the Canada Border Services Agency if you're coming across the border.
Great. If IELTS is not available in my country, what are my options?
Sarah, do you have the answer for that one?
As far as I'm aware, testing is available in most countries, but those are the 2 tests that are required for our permanent resident programs. So it's either IELTS or CELPIP. So you have to, if it's not available where you are directly located, then you would have to determine what are your options to be able to access that test for yourself.
Okay. And this is a specific question. Okay, lots of specific questions. Okay. Could you provide information regarding the self-employed program?
I don't have a lot of details about the self-employed program. What I would refer you to is to our website. There is quite a lot of detailed information that you go to the IRCC website and gather the information about that.
It's quite a specific program. It's not just self-employed entrepreneurs. There is sort of 2 types of category as well. So it's important to differentiate. Normally the self-employed is a small number of individuals who are coming through based on athletics or some other cultural expertise, such as, music or the arts. Whereas if we're talking entrepreneur, it's the startup visa, which again is a very specific program. It's not a large pathway. We don't receive a lot of applications because it's quite detailed as to what the entry criteria are. So again, not knowing the specifics as to what sort of self-employment you're referring to, best to go to the website and find the information that is directly applicable to your inquiry.
Okay, thank you so much. There are a lot of questions that have come in, and I believe you've shared the contact information. So people, please, if you're here, please do connect. Can you please share that information again, Darcy? What is the best way to send? Okay, here it is. So my colleague has just typed it in. Please call the IRCC Client Support Center at 1-888-242-2100. Is that correct, Darcy?
That is correct. And then the other option is there is a web form there on our website. So if you just go in IRCC web form, and if you have something specific to your application, that is the best way to make sure that makes it to where your application is being processed.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry that we don't have time to go through other questions, but thank you for being here. And thank you so much to Darcy and Sarah. That was really informative. And thanks to everyone for joining us. And before we go, thank you to our presenting sponsor, the Bank of Montreal, our associate sponsor, Public Mobile, our gold sponsors, Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants, BICSBC, and to all our exhibitors. So please rejoin the fair and feel free to chat with our exhibitors who will answer your questions. Our next session will be at 3 p.m. PST, which is our closing panel. The road to success is paved with soft skills. The fair is open till 4 p.m. PST, so feel free to rejoin the fair. And thank you so much to everyone who's here and to our speakers. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.